So, probably all know we do have a cemetery. Many Episcopal churches have a cemetery or a columbarium. So in order to be placed here, you have to be cremated, right? And I don't know if y'all know how this works, but we have a chart inside, kind of a grid to know where everyone's remains have been placed. So that's all tracked. And then, of course, there's a plaque with everyone's name on it. But you have to be a member of the church, or I'm not quite exactly sure how specific, or a family member who's a member of the church in order to be buried here, okay? So I started outside just because I wanted to just mention this. What's the deal with the red doors?
It's paid for.
That is, Marcia, literally the first time I've ever heard that.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not being like silly. I'm being serious. I have so there are different explanations given for this. So a lot of times when you ask them, like, why are your church doors painted red? People go, heck if I know. But I had never heard.
We had a big painting ceremony when the mortgage was paid off.
And the reason I'm is like, so I served as vicar of a church. Do y'all remember what that means? I'm testing you from last time. I'm getting you ready for the final exam. Well, mission church. It meant a church that couldn't support it on its own. It had help from the diocese, and those doors were red. So I don't.
That wasn't paid for.
Maybe they own the product. But again, this dates back to the Middle Ages, red door. Red doors were a symbol of.
Have it in the Middle Ages.
No, I know. Red. If you saw red doors, that was a sign of sanctuary. That meant that was a safe space. If you got it within those red doors, the authority. Okay, so symbolically, you're entering into a space, a part of this space we call the sanctuary. Now, it may not be what you think it is. So that's something I want to mention today. Some churches inside the church, the whole space where people congregate is the sanctuary. Okay? Our sanctuary is a little more specific. It's not the whole space. It's a portion of the space. Okay? But, you know, the other thing is blood of Christ. Okay? This has become a thing. Not every Episcopal, it's not a requirement that an Episcopal church has to have red doors. Many of them do. It's a way to spot Episcopal churches, but there are other denominations that sometimes paint their doors red. But there's symbolism to this. Now, these doors weren't red until, and the church had been paid off, but when the bishop there are pictures of Bishop Wright here for, I forget what celebration, what 150 or whatever, when he was here, and they painted the doors red. These doors were brown. So there are pictures of the church that I have from before my time where the doors are brown. Okay? So I didn't mean to make light of Marcia's name tag thing, but y'all, when you get groups of people together and decisions are talked about or made, and sometimes especially at a church, a place that's very important, and you think, oh, we're just painting the doors, like what, like, or we're just implementing name tags, or we're just moving this object inside, it can be, yeah. So y'all, right here, the space between the door and this spot where you're going to sit. I'm going to give you the name for that in a second. This is called the narthex. Some churches, the narthex is substantially bigger. Some, it's small. Okay, but it's literally the gathering place between the outer door to the church and where we're about to go. Okay? We're just going to point some stuff out along the way. Okay, who knows what these are called? Inside that is wine and wafers for the 11 o'clock service. But when they're back here, what do we call these? Oblations. So I'm actually making an announcement this today. We don't do this at 8:30, but we'll do this at 11, where we have oblation bearers, meaning a family, a person, a couple, whoever it may be, bring these up just before the start of communion. And symbolically, that represents the people are giving the bread and the wine to be used on the altar, right? So in the space, all the objects, there's a lot of theological symbolism to these things, okay? So,
I'll hold it.
got it? Okay. Y'all wait right back there by that white thing in the corner. So I brought my class in. Yeah. No, I was just giving you a heads up in case you need to. Okay. All right. So, narthex. This is called the nave. So again, in some churches, they may just refer to this whole space as the sanctuary. We specifically call this the nave. All right? Just where people sit right here in this section. Where does that come from? Anybody know? What does it sound like?
I'm going to say it sounds like nativity.
Okay. What else does it sound like? Nave. Navy. Ship. Latin for ship. You kind of get the sense, and again, some churches are more intentional when they're made, of maybe being a little bit more curved to look like, yes, okay? Because this became a symbol for Christians and their churches. This is like a ship, so to speak, which is where the word nave, most people would say that's where it's derived from, okay? Now,
Yes, this is what I was interested in.
what is this?
Holy water.
Okay, yes, so this is blessed water. So some people, this isn't a requirement. There are a lot of things done in the service, y'all. It's up to the individual. It's not stipulated. It's, again, personal devotion. Some people will walk in, right, with holy water. So that's been blessed. What is this called?
Font out.
Baptismal font. Okay, now we have two. This one and an immovable one up there by the organ, which we'll see that in a few minutes.
If that were mine, it would be immovable.
So here's the thing. Different churches, there's also a theology around where you place the font. Okay? Some of them, and we happen to have two. So we have one by the door. So many churches will put the font, sometimes it's actually in the narthex. So at Sewanee, where I studied, our chapel, the font is in the narthex before you actually enter into the church. Sometimes they're in the back of the church as you walk in. Why is that? What might that represent?
Coming in each way.
When you come in, it's a reminder of your baptism and your baptismal vows. Okay? Oh, I left something important out or interesting about the narthex. Back in the day, before people had been confirmed and were officially in the church, or if they had done really, really awful things and were told, you need to go get yourself straight and, practice some penitence and seek forgiveness before you can come back and join us for the service, people would be told to wait in the narthex. You can't actually come in for all the good stuff. You got to wait. But so some churches, again, it's in the back. Others will have it here. Again, as a reminder, as you're maybe walking up to communion kind of thing. So again, that's kind of personal preference, what that particular congregation has decided to do with that. But the font is a very important symbol, and that's what we use for baptisms.
So I read that it's communal. I mean, you can fill up a water bottle in that. Is that the case?
Yeah. I mean, I won't say. Yeah, I mean, if you want to take a little holy water with you home, sure.
Well, I've got the bottle.
You can do that. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's changed out, and then there are prayers and blessings that we do over that to consecrate it. Yeah. Now the other one up here that you'll see, that one we only use for baptisms. So there's no water in that one.
Do you ever use this for baptism?
I haven't since I've been here, but you have to understand, I mean, I started during COVID, and then so there haven't been a lot, though we're doing more, and I'll tell you, most families, when we're talking about, they prefer that one. The issue with, because of where it's located, people back here, right? So yeah. But yeah, so this is nave. Come up. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this before. We actually have a very cool video done by a drone that goes around the church and up and above, but it is very obvious from looking down, the church is in the shape of a cross. Okay? This is known as a transept. Yes, interestingly enough, I'm talking about flight attendants today in my sermon, and now I'm acting like one. Transept cuts across the nave, okay? Come on up. Okay, so not every Episcopal church has one of these. We do. This is a votive station. So if there's someone in particular you want to pray for, someone who's passed, you come over and you can light a candle and say a prayer for that person. Okay? That's what that's all about. So this church did not have one of those. And as a gift to Wesley Smith, because he served as interim here for much longer than he had originally thought, the church wanted to do something special for Wesley in honor of his service. And Wesley said, oh, how about a votive station? We don't have one. And so that's there. We have to be careful with this. There aren't a lot of wonderful, perfect spots for this here. So I've tried to kind of think about maybe another place, just because we have to come in every day, make sure because fire code, before we leave, we have to extinguish the candles. My previous church had wasn't really the narthex, but it was like a hallway that was stone. So that's where the votive station was, and we just kind of let it go because it wasn't really going to do any damage. But we have to be careful with this. But that's what that's about. So if you ever come in before service or after and just want to say personal prayer for someone, offer that up. That's what that's for, okay? In case you didn't know. There's a fire extinguisher in the sacristy. Actually, it's hanging, it might even be on this wall. Okay, obviously this is the organ. You can go, there's actually a panel that's removed that we can go up in there, and sometimes it won't cut on. And so
So we can light these anytime.
you can light those anytime. This is, okay, all right? And that's different from, okay? So what's the difference? Readings, sermon. Though, as y'all know, I don't always use that. I don't even, most of the time, use that. But that's the purpose. Okay, now depending on where you are, so I'm also talking about today in my sermon, without giving out too much away, for those of you who haven't heard it. So I'm from Virginia. I didn't grow up Episcopalian. I grew up in another tradition, but especially Episcopal churches in Virginia. So Virginia Episcopalianism is considered more Protestant, and if you're more Protestant in churches, you emphasize the sermon more in a lot of them. So that's why in some cases the pulpit. So this is all to say that placement of things, size, height, prominence, oftentimes says something about the kind of flavor of worship there, the theology, that sort of thing. Okay?
Is the pulpit on the right side more of a middle church?
Say that again.
Does it matter which side it's on?
I'm trying to think of churches where I've been. Almost everyone I've ever served in, it's on the right.
I think the one at All Saints was on the left when I was in college.
I mean, I'm even thinking here, St. Philip's, it's on the right. That's a good question. I'd have to look that up in terms of like church architecture. And if it's, these are what are called prayer desks. So you'll notice at the service, the person doing prayers of the people will read from these. Okay, now y'all, I'm a little freer in terms, so my predecessor insisted that if you read the prayers, you had to do it from this prayer desk. I don't go quite that far, but that's what those are called, prayer desks, okay? We talked about the font, this area. Who sits here? This is the choir area, okay? This, so this is raised up, right? Separating from the nave. There's a term for this. Really, the whole space is called the chancel, okay? But specifically, choir, chancel, okay? Again, the chancel is kind of a separator between where the congregation is sitting and where some of the people leading the service are located. Does that make sense? Okay. Yo, question, stop me. Which ones?
The two hanging down with the lights on the back.
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Those are just pretty ornamentation that camouflages the lights.
Okay, because I wondered the same thing.
Yeah, it was like, what is that?
You see, I always wondered
Yeah.
what the anchor was for. Is that part of the nave thing?
Yeah, I wondered that too.
Like,
Yeah, and that's part, and okay.
Okay.
Let's work our way up.
Yes.
Processional cross, gospel cross.
why are they turned sideways, not facing the altar and the people?
So that's a great question. That is the tradition here.
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 Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes these are like placed in holders up by the altar. Again, these are sometimes in different spots. This is where they happen to be. And I don't know if it was because if they're turned this way and we're up here at a certain angle, it's going to block the view of people.
They're turned that way so the choir faces across.
Okay.
That's why they're turned that way. That's why we make sure that the things face the choir.
So the
Gotcha.
choir sees it,
So
not
the choir's always, we're facing across, the choir's not.
Oh, so the congregation's facing this cross. They're facing these cross. So everyone's facing a cross, but it's, okay. Okay. Do you want to take over? No, I'm serious.
I'm running things. I thought I was one of them had these things up here too.
between.
Yeah, yeah. So y'all, those are just pretty light coverings.
They've been there for 100 years.
That's what those are. I mean, it's kind of like, why do these, what's, you know, they're pretty, and they just look nice in this space. Yeah, some people cross themselves on their way up to get communion. Some people cross themselves up here. Some people cross themselves after. It depends. You may know, so me personally, whenever Christ is mentioned in a prayer or something, I do a little. That's what I do. Some people do something called genuflect. Do you know what that is?
It's where you bow.
Yeah, but when you
Oh, all the way.
before they go to their seat. Some people
Yeah, I
then
bow.
go sit. Some people go sit down. So it's not like any of those are right or wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Chancel, choir, altar rail. Okay. This, because someone mentioned that anchor. This whole thing, is called a reredos.
A what?
Reredos. R-E-R-E-D-O-S. Reredos. That's this whole kind of, this part. Okay? Now, this was built at some point, y'all, and I've thought about coming in here one day and just trying to do this. And then if it goes wrong, then this is one of those things where you did what? You moved what? There's a stained glass behind here that's blocked. If you went around back, you would see it. But there's another one right here, but you can't because they covered it up. And the rationale for that was it was in order to make it easier to see this cross. That it would be too hard to see against the stained glass. Okay, but if you see, they're in sets of 3 all the way down. Okay, anchor because, we see the church as like an anchor in our life. So yeah, each of these are on purpose in terms of the symbolism. I mean, Christ and the bread and the wine, communion.
I found them online. Because I think, aren't they all the same in every church?
I mean, they're common symbols in churches.
But different churches will use different ones.
Yeah, and different denominations are going to emphasize certain symbols over others. I want you to come back for my sermon at 11, but I'm now, like I grew up in a church, there was not a lot of symbolic art in the church. It just wasn't.
Beautiful. Not all churches have stained glass behind the altar.
Yeah, so, y'all, this is nave, transept, chancel, choir, sanctuary. So remember I said we tend to make it very much like more specific, sanctuary. Behind the altar rail, sanctuary. Okay? Altar table. Anyone know what this is called?
Credence table.
Credence
Altar guild.
spoken like a true altar guild member. Yeah, or I mean, in this case, it's a shelf, but yeah, credence table. And so this is where the things for the altar, for communion, we utilize this, okay? And for offerings and various things, okay?
Would you discuss ringing of the bells? I didn't know about that, and somebody told me that it was every time there was a especially sacred thing that was being said, the bells were rung.
So we didn't have bells,
Yes, I know.
and I really like bells. And these are used in a lot of churches at specific times. And there are some other times they can be used, but you'll hear these 3 times. When I raise the bread, when I elevate the wine, and at the very end of the Eucharistic prayer when I elevate both. That's when you hear these. So that's part of the Eucharist. So y'all, a lot of things that were done originally and still are, but in the early church, a lot of people couldn't read. They couldn't follow. It was very visual and very sensory. So this is why at certain points in communion, I lift things up. That goes all the way back to the early church so that people could see the host or the chalice, right? And the same thing with bells, like important, draw my attention, that kind of thing, okay? So, yeah, and I'm trying to spread, like I like a good vigorous, I mean, this guy right here needs to train everybody because I'm like,
Why don't we ring the bells?
we don't have bells.
We don't have bells. Oh, okay.
We do not.
No reason not to.
We do not.
Where are the bells around, because when I was sitting in the car coming into supper a week or so ago,
The Baptist church
there were
has bells.
bells ringing.
Baptist church.
Baptist church has bells.
And I mean, it's computerized.
Right,
It's
right.
digital, but
It's digital.
yeah. I have had that conversation. You would think of all places. Here's something else very interesting. Side note, prominent Griffin family with ties to this church funded the bell tower and its actual bells at Swanee.
Oh, wow.
So if you're ever at Swanee and hear those bells, there's a Griffin connection to that. But y'all, an actual bell tower with like the real thing,
Yeah.
maintenance, but it's beautiful.
Yes.
But a lot of churches now that you hear something like, oh, bell, it's computerized. Yeah. Okay.
Leftovers.
This is called the tabernacle. Okay. Already consecrated bread and wine go in the tabernacle. Okay. Now, occasionally, if we're a little off, so during a communion, I know before a service, here's how many wafers we're going to have. Here's how, like, if the number's a little bit off, sometimes you'll see me go, right? Or, we have gluten-free, and we have parishioners who need gluten-free. Maybe we haven't blessed enough on that day, but we have some here. But for the most part, these are to be used for those who are sick, in the hospital, homebound, whatever it might be. These are already blessed.
Do you have a little travel case to put them in?
We have travel communion kits, and with a little itty-bitty chalice, and
I found one in a flea market or antique shop not too long ago.
yeah. And so and just so you know, during communion, okay, so when you see me, or today it'll be Wesley at 11, I'm preaching, and he's going to be, the person who is kind of leading the service at a Eucharist is called a celebrant. That may sound like a weird word, but think about, we celebrate the Eucharist. It's a celebration. The person leading it, or here at the is the celebrant. And so certain words will be said, certain things will be done with our hands, okay, where we're blessing it, we're consecrating it. Once that's done, we don't just like put them back in the general stock, or we don't just kind of discard them with no kind of thought of like, oh, let's just throw these in the trash. They're blessed. So they go here. Sometimes some of the wine is consumed here at 8:30. If we have one chalice and it's a little bit, I'll just take care of it. But we have a blessed sink in the sacristy, and I can show you all that. The sacristy is where a lot of the prep work is done for this. It's where we keep wafers and wine and certain things that we use. But there's a blessed drain. That's all it's used for. Would be to dispose of already consecrated wine. That's it. Okay?
Where does that?
You see some of the seats are a little fancier, so here's one thing. There's always in a cathedral one chair that's like the fanciest of them all. That chair is called a cathedra in Latin. So what that means is when you're speaking from the cathedral, a bishop, that's the bishop's chair, basically. So a cathedral is a specific church where a bishop, it's the bishop's primary church, and it's named actually for a particular seat in that church. Cathedra means chair.
Presence candle.
So cathedral is bishop's chair church. Kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Presence candle.
Presence candle, right? Yep. So y'all, this is an actual candle. Okay, we replace these when this burns all the time.
It's very hard when you're short to get the ladder and stand
You
up
need
there,
to, yeah. But there's this,
blow
there's
it
a,
out on the bottom and not burn your hand.
so what is this for?
Signify.
Christ.
And so this dates back to the earliest time. I mean, it really predates Christianity. To the temple, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, there was always lamp burning at all times. This is where the holiday of Hanukkah comes. Do y'all know that story? So this happened a lot in Jerusalem. Different groups would come in and go, wow, this place we like it here. We're going to take over. Anyway, the temple had been taken over and desecrated. Okay, effectively destroyed in terms of worship. And then it was recaptured, okay, by they're called the Maccabees. There are books in the Apocrypha that tell this story. The Maccabees got the temple back, they cleaned it up, but they discovered, oh my gosh, there's only enough oil to burn one day in this lamp. We need to consecrate, we need more oil for our eternal lamp. The oil miraculously burned, not one day, but 8 days. And they gave them enough time to consecrate new oil. Guess what? You know how long Hanukkah is? 8 nights, 8 days. That's where that comes from. Other questions up here. Gospel book. Altar book. All the services here.
Could you discuss a church calendar in terms of what season it is? And the colors?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you think of the whole year, there are actually two major divisions on the church calendar. Easter, Christmas. Okay, now obviously Advent is a seed that leads into Christmas. And then you have Epiphany, right? That's all kind of one. You can count that as one. Then you have Lent and Easter, Pentecost, and the season after that. But the colors, again, these represent seasons, right? So we change these. Purple is Lent, right? Purple will not be here for Easter. Easter will be white. Yep.
And then what?
We would take this off if there would happen to be a funeral during Lent. These come off. We put the white on. We also do this if there's a funeral during during Lent. We say Alleluia. That's the exception. Okay? Otherwise, during Lent, on Sunday, we're not saying the word Alleluia. But a funeral is it's a resurrection service. Right? So that trumps this. Does that make sense? And so we have calendars too. These are super. We have extras if y'all want. Calendars for each. Has the color for each day. That's helpful. The color that's the most prominent though throughout the year. Who knows what that is? Green. So we do not have currently at this church. Not that I'm looking for donations on this. But we would take it. But anyway, we don't have a really nice set of red. We have all these things, but they're kind of pieced together. It's not all one set. You can tell all these, this is highly coordinated. Red is the least used, quite frankly. The day of Pentecost, ordinations.
What's the color, I think of Fat Tuesday too, traditionally red was the color.
And red's also used for days on which major feast days of the apostles, and in part because a lot of them were martyred, and so red, blood, right? But those are often on weekdays, so you don't get those out that often. So all this is to say, though, the colors reflect the season. Okay? Y'all today, hey Josh, are we starting up with torchbearers today?
Maybe.
Questionable? Maybe? Perhaps?
I haven't checked on our attendance downstairs. We got one sick, but there's a maybe.
Okay.
We're trying.
Okay. So yeah, we're about to start. We trained all the youth, of which there's a decent number now. We don't even currently do all the things you can do in terms of involvement of people to help with the service. So typically some of the roles, it's not that adults can't do them, because they can, but in a lot of churches, there's certain roles for young people and children. And so one of the things we're starting, if not this Sunday, next Sunday, are carrying these in, the procession. These we call torches. Portable candles. So you're a torch bearer if you carry this. Okay? Those go right there. Okay? Other questions? They're candlesticks.
Yeah,
These?
yeah.
Yeah.
Angels.
Yeah, are they particular angels? Or just? Okay.
So there's an amazing book. There's an amazing book in the library where everything is recorded. And if you know Jackie Smith does calligraphy. Absolutely beautiful. This book in calligraphy everything, these are new. Everything you could think of that was a gift, it's recorded, date, who gave it, what it is in that book. So I will confess, I don't know the story of these and when and how, but
They're very pretty.
yeah. And so, yeah, sometimes people will go, I want to give this in honor of someone, and so we'll talk about, well, what is it? This is a gift from Jean Gregory in honor of her husband. So,
How nice that we got new bases for those candles.
what's that?
How nice that we got new bases.
Right, so yeah, we just got and Jackie gave those
Did
in
you
honor of Philip.
talk about the arrangements for Lent versus the rest of the year?
Thank you, Josh. Yeah. Yo, everything is, so this is what people don't, well, I'm kind of glad they don't, but a lot of people don't, I think, comprehend the detail and I'm not looking for points here, but the work that goes into everything, because it's most amazing to me when you just go, this is what they do. This is wonderful and beautiful, and it's what you come to expect. But all this, y'all, I don't do this. There are volunteers who set this. Altar Guild, there's Flower Guild. Now, y'all, usually these are just but it's Lent. So because of that, we don't have super fantastic, extravagant, we go. It's all to kind of fit together and work together based on the season of the year, based on the day.
This was wonderful.
It was. Yeah, thank you so much.
Like field trip.
Yes,
I hope this was helpful.
very.
And y'all, so what I thought we could do is just, we've covered a lot, but if y'all wanted to do one more Sunday, well, actually next Sunday we're gonna have a guest here, but if you wanted to do one and just any questions, any final questions or whatever you have, we could do that. And then I think that'll be it.
Oh, so we could still do the Sunday school hour next week.
So the Sunday school, I'm gonna need to be with our guest who's visiting from out of town. So we'll do it the week after. Yeah, okay? Okay, thank you. Oh, y'all almost forgot.
We are gonna have torch bearers for our granddaughters. We get handed.
Yeah, look, I got one, it has everything on it. This is part of the final exam though, so.
This is awesome, thank you.
This has everything.